Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 9 o'clock in the evening. Here are the main issues for this edition. South Sudanese belligerents signed peace deal. The students of the interior regions enter class. On continental news, the president of Nigeria, Buhari, declared himself officially candidate to the presidency elections. That were our top stories, and now let's get to the details. Return of the president of the Republic after his participation in the IGAD summit on peace in South Sudan. The President, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, returned home today, Thursday, following his participations in the extraordinary one-day summit on September of the IGAD on peace in South Sudan, which took place in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. During his participation in this summit, the Djiboutian head of state took part in the work of adoptions of clause complementary to the general agreement of intention of peace already realized the last 5th August in Khartoum, capital of Sudan, by the protagonist of South Sudan. These complementary clauses in question dealing particularly with the modalities of power sharing and the arrangement to be made to provide South Sudan with an armed forces that is inclusive and representative for all the ethnic components of the country. In this working visit to Addis Ababa, the President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, was accompanied by a large delegation composed among other the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mr. Mahmoud Ali Yusuf. Opening of the summit and the signing of the agreement, the extraordinary summit of IGAD heads of state closed its work last night by the signing of the agreement between the leaders of Southern Sudan. It's with great applause that the South Sudanese President Salva Kiir and his rival Riek Machar have signed their signature to the agreement sealing peace. An agreement that puts an end to 4 years of deadly conflict that has left thousands of people died and pushed millions of South Sudanese flee. The signing ceremony took place in the presence of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, and his delegation, as well as all the leaders of the country of the IGAD, including the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, that of Sudan, and the President of Sudan, Omar Hassan Ahmed al-Bashir, and the President of Uganda. The signing of this agreement, which President Guelleh has contributed since its inspections, has necessitated additional clause to the general peace agreement already achieved on August 5th in Khartoum by the two parties. These additional clauses adopted outside the work of the summit concern inter alia the modalities of power sharing and the provisions to be made to end Southern Sudan with an armed force representative of all the components of this country. At the end of the signing ceremony of the agreement, the President of the Republic, in an interview with our colleagues, Mohamed Dahir, declared himself very satisfied with the finalizations of this agreement and was confident about the implementations of the peace agreement in its term. This is a final agreement that aims to put an end to this deadly conflict. The head of state said that that IGAD has sponsored this important agreement between the protagonists of South Sudan. Finally, President Guelleh affirmed the support of the Republic of Djibouti to the effort aimed at stability in this friendly country in the framework of the member country of IGAD. After a primary and middle school student, it was the turn of high school students to return to school today, Thursday. 6,371 students in the general secondary and 4,730 students in technical and vocational secondary have gone back to school. As usual, the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, Mr. Mustafa Mohammed Mahmoud, has performed his traditional tour of supervisions at the head of strong delegations of the executive from his department. The minister went to the school of Beka 12 and Hodan. The ministerial delegations were greeted by the head of schools they have visited. The minister was able to inquire about the arrangement of a successful start to school by visiting the classroom and having a brief exchange with the teacher and students. On the same day, the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, Mr. Mustafa Mohammed Mahmoud, made his visit to the League, the vocational high school. Following this, the Minister and his collaborators had long discussions with the administrative and educational authorities of these schools. The discussions revolved around the framing letters as well as the introductions and orientation related to the new project of transformation of the Djiboutian school. The ministry insisted on the responsibility, the conscience and the professional rigor among the teacher as well as the personnel in charge of the school life. He was satisfied with the commitment and determination of his interlocutor to give the best of themselves to meet the challenge of transforming the Djiboutian school. And as always, the minister was satisfied with the solemn commitment of educational and administrative head of state to give the best of them and to succeed in their noble missions to teaching and educating children. Like the Republic primary and secondary school in the RTD region opened their doors on Wednesday. In general, 4,008 students have returned to their schools after a summer's holiday. On this occasion, the prefect of the region, Mr. Abdullah Darar Aki, accompanied by the head of the main FOB region services, Mr. Hassan Ali Hadi, supervised the good proceeding of the new school year. The start of this school year 2018-2019 was characterized by the jar of the uniform. And now let's move to Dikh region. Like the rest of the country, the start of the school year 2018-2019 took place on Wednesday in very condition in the basic education institution of the Dikh region. In total, about 5,200 elementary and 2,700 middle school students returned to classroom. Throughout the Dikh region, as usual, the local authorities, including the prefect of Dikh, Mr. Mohammed Sheikh Hassan, and the president of the regional council, Mr. Abdurrahman Yunis Are, led by a newly appointed inspector to Mr. Mohammed Alengele, have returned a number of basic and middle level educational institutions in the region capital to oversee the start of the school year. The great novelty of this year is, of course, the entire into force school uniform in basic educations, where students all wearing the same clothes, a policy to establish the framework of the implementation of equity and the fight against social discriminations. Obokh, like the rest of the country, the start of this school took place on Wednesday. In these regions, as usual, the local authority composed in particular acting prefect and the regional council president, as well as the inspector assigned to turn several primary and middle schools in the capital of the region in order to supervise the smooth running of the new school year. The great novel of this year was, of course, the entire of the school uniform in basic education. Students wore the same clothes. And now in Tadjoura, where all the students enter their school that took place on Wednesday in this region. It's the Torah, the primary school, with about 6,875 students, and middle school with 1,300 school. As usual, the local authority composed, in particular acting prefect Habib Jilani and the regional council Mr. Omar Hussein, led an inspector assigned to Mr. Farah, turned several primary and middle school in the capital of the region in order to supervise this smooth running of the new school year. The great novelty is, of course, the force of school uniform in basic education. In Ali Sabih, the students began yesterday in the capital and all the region of country. Students of primary school and middle school in the region of Ali Sabih resumed yesterday morning the bath of classes in joy and serenity. 6,910 people from the basic school returned to school, of which is 4,495 were elementary school students and 2,440 were middle school students. A delegation led by the prefect of the region, Mr. Mohammed Waberi Asowe, accompanied by the president of the regional council, Mr. Omar Ahmed Wa'ais, as well as the new national education inspector, Mr. Ahmed Hamadou Ibrahim, have made supervisions visits to the school of the city Ali Sabih and were very satisfied with the uniform of 90% of elementary school students were wearing. And now let's move on in health. The president of health chaired yesterday afternoon an important delegate preparatory meeting of the vaccination campaign against poliomyelitis and measles, in addition to the acting secretary general Mr. Saleh Abdullahi. This preparatory meeting has mobilized all officials and the various directors of the Department of Health and the main partners with the expanded program of new immunizations who is leading this campaign. Indeed, the Minister of Health planned to launch a national-wide vaccination campaign for the eradication of polio and measles, targeting children less than 5 years throughout the territory. In his address, the Minister of Health asked for the involvement of all the active forces and the mobilization of all the necessary resources throughout the implementation of the useful device in order to reach the essential objective of vaccination 100% of the children targeted by the vaccination campaign focused on a preventive immunization strategy. The IPA team has developed effective and bold micro-planning for this purpose to ensure that all the objectives are achieved. And now let's move on in international organizations. The International Organization for Immigrants this morning handed over motorbikes to the National Director of Civil Protections. The donation ceremony took place this morning at the headquarters of Civil Protection. Two higher capacity bombs will strengthen the operational capacity for the firefighters during the period of high rainfall that caused flooding. These motorcycles bombs have a capacity of evacuation of 2,000 liters of water per minute. This ceremony of presentation has presented the participation of the Minister of Interior, Mr. Hassan Omar, and the Chief of Missions of OEM, Lalani, and the Deputy Director of Civil Protections, Colonel Abdul Qadir Abayzid Musa, and the owners, as well as the responsible of civil protection. In a speech, the OEM, his head of mission, stated that this donation will enable firefighters to effectively fulfill their missions. The Minister of the Interior thanks in a brief speech the International Organization of Migrants for their generous help and unconditional support, especially after the passage of Hurricane Sagal. He said that these materials will help to further strengthen the capacity of civil protection directors of evacuations of used area. And he thinks that all participating for these missions and this framework. On continental news, Nigeria and President Muhammad Buhari officially filled his candidacy for his party's primary on Wednesday to participate in the next presidential election scheduled for the next February. He declared himself with all the humility, the sense of responsibility and indisputable desire to serve and protect the interests of all Nigerians. I assure as well to the rest of Nigerians that I am appointed and elected, and I will continue to serve you to the best of my abilities, Buhari said. The main opposition party, the People Democratic Party, has extended the closing date of applications to primary and will choose its candidate on 6th of October. Among those who have already declared their intention to compete, former Vice President Atiku and the senator leaders are freeze opponents of Buhari. Here we finish this news. Thank you all for watching us. Goodbye.